Welcome to the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting training video series. This series is delivered by the Clean Energy Regulator and aims to help you report under the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Act 2007, also known as the NGER Act. This video will cover ways to simplify your reporting that are available for reporters under the NGER Act. There is a range of terms used in this video that have a specific meaning, including Clean Energy Regulator, NGER, Determination, NGER Act, EARS, and Regulation. To learn what each of these means, please refer to the video Introduction to the Clean Energy Regulator and NGER from the NGER training video series, available by following the links at the end of this video. This section discusses the streamlining provisions available within the NGER legislation. There are several options available to help reduce the amount of data collection or data entry required to report compliantly. Not every activity to be reported is large. Some of the activities you need to report may be very small in quantity, or you may have multiple remote facilities whose activities need to be reported. The choice of the best streamlining provision to use will depend on your circumstances. We strongly encourage you to use them where possible. This video will cover three types of streamlining provisions available within the NGER legislation: facility aggregate reporting, percentage reporting, and incidental reporting. For each of these streamlining provisions, please note that the general principles under Section 1.13 of the determination apply. This means that any methods used should adhere to transparency. Estimates must be documented and verifiable and can be audited or queried by us. Comparability. Estimation methods must be comparable with those used by a similar corporation or industry sector and be consistent with those used in Australia's national greenhouse accounts. Accuracy. Uncertainties in estimates must be minimised to ensure estimates are not statistically significantly different from their true value. And completeness. All reportable sources listed in the NGER legislation must be accounted for in your report. We will start with facility aggregate reporting. Facility aggregates are where you combine any number of smaller facilities together into one facility aggregate. Reporters can include facility aggregates in their submission if they meet the provisions detailed under Regulation 4.25. Reporting a facility aggregate reduces the amount of information you need to report about a facility, as well as reducing the number of individual activities you need to enter. Rather than enter information about multiple facilities, you can instead enter one facility aggregate. Facility aggregates are useful if you have operational control on many small facilities that perform the same function and are situated in the same state or territory, such as retail shops. This table illustrates a comparison between the identifying information you need to report for an individual facility compared to that you need to report for a facility aggregate. A benefit of facility aggregates is that you don't need to provide the street address or geographic coordinates for each facility within the aggregate. Instead, you simply include the number of facilities that make up the aggregate. As well as reducing the amount of information you need to enter about facilities, facility aggregates reduce the amount of data entry lines required for reporting your activities. Rather than report each facility's fuel or electricity consumption in a separate line, all equivalent activities can be combined into one single activity. For example, if a reporter has 3 retail shops operating independently across Victoria, if reported separately, each of these 3 facilities might need to individually report their diesel consumption, gasoline consumption, and electricity consumption separately. However, the reporter has determined that all 3 facilities meet the thresholds required under Regulation 4.25 to be reported as a facility aggregate. As such, these facility data can be combined and reported as one line item for each activity type. This reduced the amount of data entry required to report their activities, and meant that they did not need to calculate how much of their invoiced fuels and electricity were consumed by each individual facility within the facility aggregate. There are some restrictions on how you can use Regulation 4.25 to report facility aggregates. Facility aggregate reporting is only available within Section 19 and Section 22X reports. Section 22G reporters cannot use facility aggregates. Each facility aggregate must contain more than one facility. For each year of reporting, the facility aggregate must be updated to accurately reflect any changes in the number of facilities contained within. You can only aggregate the facilities within a group member or business unit under your corporate structure. Each facility contained within the facility aggregate must be located within the same state or territory. Each facility must be of the same industry type in the Australian and New Zealand Standard Industrial Classification, or ANZIC codes. These codes are published by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Facility aggregate reporting is intended to report smaller facilities. As such, there are limits on how large the facility is allowed to be in order to be included within a facility aggregate. For a facility to be permitted within a facility aggregate, it must emit less than 25 kilotons of Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions combined, produce and consume less than 100 terajoules of energy, and cannot be a designated generation facility. If a facility fails to meet all these requirements, it cannot be included within a facility aggregate. We will now move on to the percentage reporting provisions. Percentage reporting allows reporters who submit Section 19 or Section 22X reports to estimate facility emissions and energy reporting as a percentage of the corporation's totals. This reduces the amount of information and reporting you need to include in your report about these activities and facilities. When it comes to entering facility details, the amount of information required to be reported for each facility included under percentage reporting is much lower. You do need to report the number of facilities included under percentage reporting, however, you do not need to include the name, ANZIC code, state or territory, or location details for each individual facility. Percentage reporting is useful if you have operational control of small facilities that are located in a different state or territory to the rest of your facilities. For example, your Melbourne-based factory could have a sales office located in Perth. Because the sales office is in another state, it can't be considered an ancillary activity of the factory and cannot be reported together with the factory. This means that you need to report the Perth sales office as its own facility. However, instead of listing a facility for your Perth activities, you could use percentage reporting and estimate the sales office as a percentage of the rest of your corporation's totals. Under this provision, you do not need to report the quantities or types of fuel and energy consumed. All you need to report are the Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, energy production, and energy consumption as a percentage of the rest of your corporate totals. In our Perth office example, the emissions and energy from the gasoline and electricity the office consumed needs to be estimated, then converted into a percentage of the rest of the corporation's totals. Once entered into EARS, your emissions and energy corporate totals will be increased by the percentages entered. So how might you estimate the emissions and energy totals for your small facilities efficiently? The agency recommends that in your first year of reporting using the percentage provisions, you use a suitable methodology to determine the energy and emissions from the small facilities. For example, the quantities of gasoline consumed could be derived from invoices during the reporting period, with an assumption that no stockpiles are present. The Method 1 calculation for liquid fuels located in Part 2.4 of the determination could then be used to determine the quantity of emissions. For the following reporting year, rather than tabulating quantities from invoices, a correlative factor could instead be employed. There are many ways to use a correlative factor. For example, you could compare the number of hours people travelled, or use the number of vehicles involved as a proxy to derive growth factors for fuel consumption increases or decreases. You should use whichever correlative factors make sense for your business. Remember that if you know that your business activities experience annual fluctuations, the correlative factors chosen should take that into account. The growth factors derived from the correlative data can then be applied to your estimate from the first year of reporting for this facility under the percentage provisions to inform your estimates for this year's report. The agency also expects that a sense check should be performed on any estimates made to ensure that the resulting data are indicative of your real-world business activities. Also, all estimates made should meet the general requirements listed within Section 1.13 of the determination. You should undertake periodic reviews of the methodology and the assumptions underpinning them when using percentage reporting. The agency considers reviews every 5th reporting period to be appropriate. However, we recommend reviews to be performed sooner if changes happen to the business activities between reviews. Documentation of this process should be retained for record-keeping purposes, keeping in mind the record-keeping requirements and associated penalties for not meeting them outlined in Section 22 of the ENGA Act. You can report any number of small facilities through percentage reporting across any number of states and territories. However, there are limits on the quantities of emissions and energy that can be reported. Each facility reported under percentage reporting must meet the requirements listed in line A. The sum of all facilities included under percentage reporting must meet the requirements listed in either line B or line C. A combination of line B and C is not permitted. Finally, we come to incidental reporting provisions. Not all activities are large in scale. Working out consumption of diesel in your large trucks is easy to track. But what of acetylene used in welding, the gasoline in your sales team's cars, or the diesel consumed in more specialist machinery? How easy is it tracking invoices, usage, and stockpiles for those? When an activity is relatively small, a reporter can choose to use incidental reporting and estimate the quantity consumed and the resulting emissions using their own methodology. As well as the mentioned examples involving combustion, it can be useful when reporting on very small sources when non-combustion occurs, such as the emissions of sulfur hexafluoride from electrical switchgear. So how can you estimate emissions and energy activities using the incidental reporting provisions? The agency recommends that in your first year of using incidental provisions, you review and study the activity and use a suitable methodology to determine the quantities of fuel or energy involved. For example, the quantities of acetylene consumed could be derived from invoices during the reporting period, combined with a review of the change in stockpiles. The agency also recommends that in your first year of using incidental provisions, you use Method 1 from the determination for that activity, using default energy and emission factors to determine the quantity of emissions. For the following reporting year, rather than performing the detailed study, a correlative factor could be used instead. There are many ways to use a correlative factor. For a transport activity, you could compare the number of hours people traveled or the number of vehicles involved. For example, for the number of hours people traveled, you could compare this year's number to last year's number to derive a growth factor. Say you had 100 hours traveled last reporting year, but 120 hours traveled for this reporting year. 120 over 100 is a 20% increase. You could then apply this 20% increase to your previous emissions estimate to derive your new estimate. For an on-site excavator, you could use the hours of operation multiplied by its fuel efficiency. You should use whichever correlative factors make sense for your business. Remember that if you know that your business activities experience annual fluctuations, the correlative factors chosen should take that into account. For our acetylene example, you could use the average consumption per hour or per day of regular activity from the subsequent reporting years, comparing them with the estimates reported for the first year of using incidental provisions. This factor could then be applied to your estimate from the first year to calculate emissions for the current reporting year. The agency also expects that a sense check should be performed on any estimates made to ensure that the resulting data are indicative of your real-world business activities. Also, all estimates made should meet the general requirements listed within Section 1.13 of the determination. You should undertake periodic reviews of the methodology and the assumptions underpinning them when using incidental reporting. The agency considers reviews every 5th reporting period to be appropriate. However, we recommend reviews to be performed sooner if changes happen to the business activities between reviews. Documentation of this process should be retained for record-keeping purposes, keeping in mind the record-keeping requirements and associated penalties for not meeting them outlined in Section 22 of the ENGA Act. You can report any number of activities through incidental reporting. However, there are limits on the quantities of emissions and energy that can be reported using incidental provisions, detailed under Regulation 4.27. There are limits on the total amount of Scope 1 or Scope 2 emissions that can be reported, as well as additional limits on the reporting of a source other than fuel combustion. For energy production or energy consumption, there are limits on the total quantities that can be reported per facility, as well as additional limits on the reporting of a source other than fuel combustion. This video is from the ENGA training video series. The Clean Energy Regulator has published a range of resources on its website, www.cleanenergyregulator.gov.au, to help you in your obligations to report under the ENGA Act. To access our training video series, visit our website and search Videos. To access our more comprehensive written guidance documents, visit our website and search Guides and Fact Sheets. To access calculators to assist you in assessing reporting obligations, estimating uncertainty in emissions, and estimating emissions from solid waste and wastewater operations, visit our website and search Calculators. For more information or help with reporting under the ENGA scheme, please contact us by calling 1300 553 542, emailing us at reporting@cleanenergyregulator.gov.au, or visiting our website at www.cleanenergyregulator.gov.au. This video has been developed by the Clean Energy Regulator to assist persons to comply with their reporting obligations under the ENGA Act. This video should be viewed in conjunction with the ENGA Act and supporting regulations and determination. Changes to legislation may affect the information in this video. The examples used in this video are for illustrative purposes only. This video is not intended to provide legal advice. If persons have concerns or questions about the application of legislation in their particular circumstances, they should seek professional advice.